Today I'm going to talk about performance management. It's been a big part of what I've done throughout my TxDOT career. I started with pavement management, so I know what performance management was because we went and rated pavement so we knew what they were doing. So you had basically a gauge what was going on. Let's see. What year car is this? It's a 1965 Mustang, I believe. Notice there's no indicator on what gear you're in, probably a standard transmission, which I heard most millennials can't drive these days. But guess what? You know, you had a speedometer, you had a fuel gauge, amp gauge, oil pressure, and temperature gauge. This is the cheapest vehicle you could buy today, according to Google. Guess what? You got a speedometer, put a tachometer on there. I guess that's because we're trying to do more with less because it's got a 4-cylinder instead of a V8, and you want to know what that is. But it tells you your temperature and your fuel gauge again. Also tells you what gear you're in. This is a $100,000 car. Looks very similar to that cheap car. Information is important. You know, you got your speedometer again, fuel gauge, water temperature, and a tachometer. God, same information. You need basic information. We're getting a lot of information on cars, but you still need that basic information there. So, what is performance management? FHWA defines it like this. Basically, you're getting data to make the strategic decisions. Very good. You know, I've used it throughout my career. When I got to TranStar, data is important. I heard Raphael yesterday indicate he has his dashboard that he created for monitoring projects, and he also for his monitoring tasks. Again, dashboards, information, very important. Makes you better managers. So what are the national performance goals? They're in 6 categories here. Safety, infrastructure, congestion reduction, which we'll be talking about. System reliability is another one. Freight movement. You know, very interesting. We were talking about Harvey. I was in a presentation about a week ago, and they showed a map of how important highways are. Basically, all of Southeast Texas had no truck movement at all during that time. So you see how important our jobs are in keeping freight and everything else moving. Environmental deal and project delivery. Again, Raphael was talking about that. So this is federal regulations. If you want more about that, you could go to this, Title 23, United States Code 150, to see what it says. So they're requiring it. And the top 10 reasons, you could do a David Letterman here, you know, have a top 10 reasons why. Bottom line, it gives you information on what's going on. Strategic activities. TxDOT'S did this for safety. You see that, you see your performance goals there for safety. It's improved safety throughout the state, so they understand it. Gives you a measurement. You see that too with that safety goals. Allows you to make better decisions, you know, support budget decisions. I could do a lot of this in my head, but I always use spreadsheets too to confirm that. So I knew when that budget was getting close. Again, I seen on that spreadsheet, he had a red light coming on just like your gas tank telling you, hey, you need to find a gas station pretty soon because you're running out of fuel. Some people don't still pay attention to that. Visibility, so it gives you incentives. Again, it says benchmarking, gives you better estimates on the future so you know what worked in the past, you know what the costs were, so that's information. And then 2 things because this is federal, it's required by their law, and it also raises your long-term chances of survival. So what does Wikipedia say about this? This sort of always look at Wikipedia to see how it was. They killed Tom Petty, I think, a few hours earlier before he died. But people were out there. We didn't know if Tom Petty was dead or not dead, you know. Unfortunately, he did pass away. They said it was created in 1943. That's probably when the term performance measures was coined. The Kennedy administration used this during the Department of Defense, probably used it for getting the man to the moon. The Johnson administration looked at this for several federal agencies, a lot of these social parts. Eventually, more and more states moved to this. Became real popular in the 70s, faded out in the 80s, and made a comeback in the 90s. And I don't know why this one is in there. It's more detail on what that was going on there. In short, basically, it's an ongoing process that you need to keep up with and stuff like that. It helps a lot improving communications to the public. You know what's going on, what works, what doesn't work. Okay, TxDOT has implemented ITS goals. So they're looking at CCTV cameras, dynamic message signs, vehicle detection, seeing what that goes. At TranStar in Houston, we've been keeping track of that since 2000, pretty much. We would go through and see what percentage of our cameras were working, what number of signs were working, vehicle detection. That made us make some goals on changing things the way we did things. We always looked at accident clearance times, and as I'll show you in the next slide on the TxDOT dashboard, there's a big significance throughout the state, and you need to figure out why that's happening. Stalls, we're working on that now. Stalls is a big problem. And then travel time reliability, that's a whole nother subject that we'll get into later on. So this is the TxDOT dashboard. How many of y'all seen that? Okay. Becoming a big part of your activity. And you see there's a wide variance in some of the numbers there. And you can't really see it, but the number of especially on accidents and stalls in Houston is a lot greater than in some of the other districts. That tells you a couple of things. Could be telling you what your staffing level is. Do you have enough camera coverage out there? And are you even recognizing those items? I know that the Houston numbers, even though they're high, are probably low on what the actual number of incidents and stalls are out there, just because of the sheer volume of the number of cameras versus staff. So, you know, that gives you lots of information here. You go back up to the metrics on the devices over there. Houston, good, bad, is a legacy system. We've been doing this a while. So we're not in line with the rest of the state. They're doing Lone Star over here, which gives them uptime on, it has to be at 75% of the uptime throughout the month based on communications. Well, we don't do communications. We actually look at performance. So if that camera has focus problems, if that camera doesn't do pan, tilt, and zoom, we don't count that as a working camera. We make it communicate to it, but it's not a working camera as far as we're concerned. Same issue with the signs. You make it be able to communicate with the sign, but if you can't read the sign, it's not working. So some of that makes those numbers lower. And then there's the travel time reliability. Again, when I get to that topic later on, you'll see people really don't understand travel time reliability. This is on the CAT lab. This is probably based on, I believe, NRIC's data, and Houston's at 66%. The state is basically in that same category. What I've noticed with that, all our number one congested areas have travel time reliability. But really, do they? Well, let's show me some, this is benchmarking here. This is information we've gathered throughout the time. Back in 2001, we had Tropical Storm Allison. Always did benchmarking on our website. We had about 6 million accesses. We thought that would never reach that again, but when we did that, we seen we had a problem. More people could have got to the website, but we didn't have a big enough pipe to the internet, so we made those corrections. Our servers had issues, so we upgraded those servers. So then came Hurricane Rita. Well, we made that pipe bigger, just like making that freeway bigger, but it wasn't big enough. So we had to make some changes again. Again, we modified the website, made it more streamlined and stuff like that. Along came Hurricane Ike. We had no problem at all. We had 12 million hits. We didn't think we would ever have that problem again. We had a tax day flood, and every time we had a weather event, I have to tell you another benchmark is the number of people that used the website went up, and they usually, that increase stayed there. And then we had Hurricane Harvey. Guess what? All that benchmarking, we had no problem at all. My understanding is our servers were never over 5% usage. They had access to the internet through that whole time, and we were delivering stuff. This is people all over the world looking at what happened to Houston. So they were looking at cameras and stuff like that. But I just got a web report this morning, and the number of users, unique users, is still up over that 800,000 that we were talking about earlier. It's about 1.5 right now. So we'll see how long that lasts. They're still probably looking to see what Houston happened to it. Okay, and this is talking about unique users again. You know, again, we followed that. We keep track of that. When I walked in the doors, I think there was 7,000 unique users for the website, and we reached 3 million during Harvey. So people seek information. So just because we kept up with it, we tried to know what was going on. We have always made it accessible and where it didn't crash. And there's some more websites. Again, we're talking about Harvey, things that everybody discussing during those, starting on the 27th, which was the worst day in the Houston area. You see what the web hits were, and they continue through. And then there's benchmarking to compare them to other events throughout the deal. As you can see, people like information during storms. The other thing is, after the event, they were seeking information because travel on the roadway, because major corridors were blocked, it created lots of congestion, so they were looking at this. And here's some more web benchmarking there, just to show you what information is all about. We got more performance measures on everything than you would have time to look at. In fact, I know there's so many, I can't even keep up with them sometimes. But that gives us information when we have questions on how to solve that. And some more. Is this connected to the internet? No, okay. Here's our website. We go website, and it's basically a dashboard on all of our incidents, basically from just regular day-to-day incidents, clearance times. It gives you the number of incidents. We keep track of our courtesy patrol, the number of contacts on the courtesy patrol, the number of contacts on our Safe Clear, which is our towing program. We keep numbers on all of that. So we have all that information to see if we're going up and down and things like that. So again, we can answer decision makers on, hey, is this program working? What do we need to do to keep it going? So we know what that's going on. Then the other one, again, benchmarking, and we've been doing this since probably the beginning of TranStar in 1996. Looking at the benefit cost, you know, that question, what is the benefit cost? So right now, our benefit cost in 2016, we're almost $15 to $1 for every $1 invested. And as time, you can see it goes up and down, but it's pretty much, you know, been consistent. It's above $10 most times, depending on fuel, depending on the economy, and things like that. So TranStar is a good deal. So with that, we're going to switch gears into travel time reliability. So this is a consistent, dependable travel times as measured day to day or across different times of day. So who understands travel time reliability? I guess for me, if I have to go to the airport and I know it's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I probably need to leave at 1 o'clock to make sure I make it there to make my flight. If it's on a Sunday morning out, I could probably leave an hour later because the dependability will be there. Wikipedia, guess what? This is all of Wikipedia. It's an orphan. What's the other thing? A stub is what it's called. Basically, nobody knows about it. There's very little information about travel time reliability, so nobody really understands what that is all about. Well, I'm going to talk about my experience. If you go over here and look at this map, the Houston district is right there off of I-10 inside of the 610, and we have sensors all the way down to Rosenberg over here. Okay, this is my day-to-day experience. I've been traveling that pretty much for 20 years. I've seen it change in 20 years. When I started working at TxDOT Houston, I had one stop sign until I got to the district office. Now, I probably go through, because Ugana's been putting signals out there like you wouldn't believe, a dozen signals over there. So that's how much has changed. I've seen the freeways change, everything else. So with that, here's some travel times. We got a Thursday at 10 a.m. That's a 23-mile trip. It's pretty much unimpeded. I go through the most congested part of the deal. Number one in the state, the West Loop. Sunday at midnight, same thing. Pretty much full speed ahead. Well, best case on Friday at 5 p.m., it gets a little worse. Monday, best case, pretty much the same thing. Friday, worst case, look, I go from a 25-minute trip to almost an hour trip. And then, you know, it goes up and down and stuff like that. And if I throw in deer season, Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays, throw that all out the window. This is based on probably 80% reliability. So 80% of the time I can make it within this range of time here. Those other days, they go out. That goes up into the 95 and other things. Guess what? I remember those worst times versus the best times. And what do? I try to compensate it by going out and either leaving early or making sure when I do depart, it is at that certain time of day. So that's what sort of travel time reliability is. How much time do you need to leave to make that trip? And what's that range there? And how many times are you going to make it? For me, been doing this for 20 years, so I really don't need to look at this. We had a gentleman come to HGAC. He lives out in the Katy area. He just started work. He was from Florida. He came in, he was 30 minutes late the first day. And I said, you need to go to HoustonTranStar.org and see when you need to depart every day and what routes you need to take. So that's what travel time reliability is. It's something that's very hard to do. Beverly Kuhn has done a lot of research on this. It's hard to convey on a dynamic message sign, but it's great for pre-trip planning. So if you're new to an area, you're gonna buy a home, this is what you need to look at. And we have lots of tools here at TranStar to look at that. Here's again, if we had internet access, I could show you a live deal, but looking at it, this is the range of time that you could go. So if I depart at, I think this is 10 a.m. on Thursday, you see my variability in time is only about 10 minutes. So it's a very predictable trip. Here I'm leaving on a Friday afternoon, and you can see that my trip variability has gone to almost 25 minutes. So something you need to look at, you know, especially if you're new to an area, so you have planning tools. Trying to convey this in a dashboard, we're having troubles. We got a whole list of all the freeway segments out there, and it's like this, and you're telling you what's below 50% and what's above 50%. So it's something that, you know, we're working on and trying to figure out, but we also look at this to make decisions on when we need to build new projects, and also put in new ITS and incident management scenarios to improve these travel times. And here's some other tools out there on the TranStar website. Tells you if what the average speed is and if it's worse than any other times of the day. So, you know, there's lots of tools out there. And then with that, we have questions. This is the North Freeway. I think they're fixing to rebuild this. This was back in, I believe, the 60s. This was the last time it was not congested, I probably.
Looks beautiful. We have any questions?
I'm just curious. I've seen performance measures, a total different subject, and it's basically based on FHWA performance measures scales, which projects get funded because that route needs to be increased so the route becomes more reliable. So what you're saying is you already have it embedded. What about other cities like Dallas and San Antonio?
I think they're working on it as well.
The question is, he's using the FHWA guidelines for the performance measures, and then trying to determine which roadways need to be widened or make improvements on to increase the travel time reliability. And Houston has all this data. What about the other cities, San Antonio, Dallas area, that may not have this information already?
Yeah. Like I said, Houston, when they first brought this up by FHWA, I wasn't worried because we were already doing a lot of this. The other ones, they're using NRICS data. They've also got sensors out there, and they're just, you know, we're working towards it. It's a fairly new subject in the ITS world and also in the determination of project world.